At a number 10 spot, we have the Torch Lake Monster. This one is pretty much well known all over Michigan, but for those who don't know, the tale of the Torch Lake Monster dates back to the early 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it takes place in Torch Lake, which is located in North Michigan, and it also is the second largest lake in the state. A fisherman and coach by the name of Dave Foley is credited with spotting the creature first and telling the stories of it since he worked by the lake for a while. Legend goes that the giant creature has a lizard's body, the head of a cat, one brown eye, and one blue eye, along with slimy green skin. The lake is approximately 285 feet deep, which makes what lies underneath much more scary and worrisome. Nighttime is when this creature is said to arise from the depths. At this time, many swimmers and boats go missing, only to wash ashore with no evidence of its demise. At a number 9 spot, we have the singing sands of Beat Gris. Located just past Lac La Belle, Michigan, is a beautiful white sandy beach known as Beat Gris. In a direct translation, this means gray beast, and that's because a large gray creature was said to have inhabited the area many years ago, but that's not even the story I'm going to talk about. Local legends claim that the pure white sand of the beach sings by pressing down your palms on it, or it barks when you strike it. The sound is said to be the voice of a Native American maiden who lost her lover when he drowned in the Great Lakes, and now she calls him on shore. The sand is said to lose its magical singing power when it's removed from the beach. Now visitors claim to hear the singing sounds, but as many try to bring the sound back home, they are met with years of unlimited bad luck, which lead many to bring it back to the beach to allow it to sing again. Other than sand that makes sounds, at a number 8 spot with the Belle Isle's Lady in White. In Detroit, Michigan, there's an island called Belle Isle. This 982-acre island is used for picnics, hikes, and home of the only marble lighthouse. Other than that, everything else on this island is shrouded in mystery and up for speculation. Legend of the island follows the story of a chief's daughter and a haunting bridge. The chief was concerned that his daughter's beauty would attract vast amounts of suitors, so to combat this, he made a deal with the snake goddess of the island. The chief asked the goddess to protect his daughter. The goddess would agree, but not for nothing. She would ask for the daughter to live out the rest of her days on the island to protect it, never being able to leave it. And to this day, the daughter is said to stay on this island and walk it, with many visitors reporting that she would try to lure them into the forest by telling them that she is looking for someone and just needs help. She supposedly takes her victims to the bridge to drown them, and it's said that if you go on this bridge and honk 3 times, she will appear just before your eyes. At number 7 spot with the Nain Rouge. It's said that since the city of Detroit was founded in Michigan, bad luck has befallen the area. This is all because of the devilish red imp known as the Nain Rouge had cursed the entire city. Local folklore suggests that the Detroit's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was warned by a fortune teller that he would come face to face with the Nain Rouge and to treat him with the utmost respect and attention. Except this information came straight this ear and right out the other, because when he finally met with this creature, he hit it with his crane and told it to stay out of his way. This is when the angry Nain Rouge cursed the city of Detroit and Cadillac. Shortly after this, Cadillac would lose his fortune and move back to France, but misfortune still occurred in the city. It's said that in all of the disastrous events that happened in Detroit, the Nain Rouge could be spotted just before all of them. For example, in 1763, 50 British soldiers perished from Native Americans, after which the Nain Rouge could be seen dancing in the aftermath in joy. Then in the surrender of the war in 1812, the Nain was blamed again for its presence. It had also been seen during Detroit's riots of 1967 and 1976's ice storm that caused electricity to go out for days. At a number 6 spot with the Masonic Temple. Currently standing as the largest Masonic temple in the world, it also stands as one of the most haunted places in all of Michigan. The temple, designed by George D. Mason, is an imposing Gothic structure at the corner of Bagg Street, later Temple Street, and 2nd Avenue across from Cass Park. The temple has over 1,000 rooms, secret stairways, and concealed passages, but unfortunately Mason would go a little too far in this construction, where it would cause him to go bankrupt, eventually losing his wife in the process. His depression slowly kicked in, and then he would jump off the roof of this temple to his death. And to this day, security guards claim to see old George's ghost climbing those steps to the rooftop. Visitors also reported many noises such as doors and windows being slammed shut. They also see moving shadows and experience cold spots all around the area, all while feeling as if they're being watched by something. Right in the hub of our list, we have the Michigan Triangle. Well, guess Michigan has their own version of Bermuda's Devil Triangle, and it contains just as much unexplained phenomena as Bermuda. The triangle goes from Manawak, Wisconsin to Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan. It was in early spring 1937 when Captain Donner was just managing his freighter ship called the OS McLaughhlin through these icy waters. He was so tired, so he decided to go to sleep and asked for one of the crewmates to wake him up when they approached shore. As they did, they noticed his room was locked, so they looked around, but nothing. They then kicked the door down and found that he vanished with no signs whatsoever. Now the triangle claims the lives of many ships and planes just like Bermuda. People have also cited the OS McLaughhlin, but as they try to get a closer look, it disappears into the waters. An odd thing about this place is when divers go to check the wreckages of ships and planes, planes, they notice that everything is still intact, including the bodies of the deceased and the ship as a whole. This is by far the scariest triangle because there is no way around it other than land. So basically there's no point in traveling in Michigan's Great Lakes. At our number 4 spot is Hell's Bridge. Back in the early 1900s, an old deranged man named Elias Frisk led a group of kids to the bridge and proceeded to murder each and every single one of them, slowly throwing them into the river below. Eventually he was caught and hung by the townspeople. Before he passed away, he made a confession claiming that he did this because he was possessed by the devil and they told him to do it. To this day, a lot of visitors to the bridge hear the screams and the cries from the children just before they pass away. People have also said that when they get home from this place, they find bruises on their body as if someone was reaching out to grab them or hit them. The worst part is that if you walk on this bridge at night, you can feel hands below you as if they're grabbing you from the river below. And at the end of the bridge, you might encounter Elias as a dark figure with glowing eyes, so you won't miss him in the dead of night. In more lesser known news, apparently you're able to sell your soul to the devil by meeting the devil in the middle of this bridge. I mean, it's called Hell's Bridge. What else did we expect? At our number 3 spot, we have the Dogman. The Dogman is described as a 7-foot tall, amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like creature, and he has the head of a dog with the body and torso of a human. Ever since its original sighting in 1887, many more sightings were spotted all over Michigan. It's primarily spotted in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Back to its original sighting back in 1887. This is when the Dogman was discovered by 2 lumberjacks who saw this creature in the distance. Things got a little more concerning when in 1937, Robert Forney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, describing that of one of the dogs allegedly stood up like a bipedal and was significantly larger than all the other dogs. This legend got more popular when disc jockey Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend, which describes the Michigan's Dogman. Although the artist claims it was made for an April Fool's joke, this kickstarted the entire legend and sightings of the Dogman would only rise after the song was released. At a number 2 spot with Melonhead. Locals fear of humanoids called the Melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, Melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. Legend goes that Melonheads reside around Felt Mansion, which is home to Dora Felt, who is an American inventor. The Melonheads were said to be the children suffering from hydrocephalus, which causes your head to expand in some cases. They were located at the Junction Insane Asylum near the home, and it's said that they endured months and months of abuse, and that one day they decided to escape and run into the forests of Michigan, where they became animal-like and very feral. Many of these Melonheads are said to be looking for the doctor who failed to care for them in order to take his life. At a number 1 spot, we have Alois Psychiatric Hospital. Located in Westland, Michigan, it was named after Detroit's postmaster Alois Davik. In 1839, it started as a poorhouse and a farm where the poor, the sick, and the needy would go for shelter and work. As time went on, the poorhouse transitioned into a psychiatric asylum and hospital. The buildings were self-sufficient, even having their own police. They were even one of the first hospitals in the world to use x-rays for diagnosis, so at least one good thing came out of here. At its peak, the place housed over 10,000 patients and over 2,000 staff members. After its closure in 1984, the hospital's abandoned grounds are said to have a few patients still left inside of it. Ghost patients, that is. There have been reports of people finding medical waste and other strange items. Some have reported finding jars containing human body parts, as well as documents outlining strange medical procedures. At number 10 spot, we have the walking statue of Augusta Bittner. In the northeastern part of Lancaster lies the Lancaster Cemetery. While the cemetery is massive and has hundreds of tombstones, one particular memorial sticks out to all guests who visit, and this is the tombstone of Augusta Bittner. The statue itself is gorgeous in an artistic standpoint, but I can definitely see why people fear the statue at night. And many visitors to the cemetery claim to see the statue walking across the grounds. The apparition is said to have flaming green eyes swollen with tears that seem to be trapped in a state of death, searching relentlessly for answers. Story goes that Augusta Bittner married a man named Stanley Tevis on May 3rd, 1905. They would eventually move to Philadelphia, where Augusta gave birth to their first daughter, Sylvia. Everything seemed to be going well until their first anniversary. Augusta fell ill to typhoid and passed a horrible death. So basically within 13 months, Augusta married, had a baby, and passed away. Her parents then spent a fortune on her tombstone, and over 100 years later, it's still standing strong and beautiful. Except for the fact it walks around crying. Yeah, no thanks. At a number 9 spot, we have the Clifton 5 Theater. This place was built in the mid-1850s and is still running to this day. The Clifton 5 Theater, formerly known as a Hunting Dawn Opera House, was so large that the street level had to be raised a total of 4 feet to accommodate it. And it was also a place where Freemasons would have meetings in secret. It wasn't until 1901 where the largest fire in Huntington's history burned down the theater. This fire saw the end of at least one person. Then in 1921, a man named Andy Gamble purchased the theater only to be met met with yet another fire. Eventually, a man named Blackbird bought the business and named it Clifton, which is named after his son who passed away in the military. And ever since, people have claimed to witness all sorts of creepy things. Visitors cite the lady in red ghost, who is believed to be a person who is well off, wearing a scarlet dress, walking up and down the stairways. When people get too close to her, they claim to hear her whisper Lolita. Perhaps a daughter? No one really knows. At number 8 spot, we have the house on Ridge Avenue. In the north side of Pittsburgh lies in what is known as the house the devil built. The house is actually 1129 Ridge Avenue and known as the Conglier House. It was built in the 1860s by Charles Conglier, who lived in the house with his wife Lida and their maid Essie. The maid and Charles would be having a secret affair, and soon after, the wife overheard what was happening, so she collected a knife and proceeded to murder the two. She would be found later humming lullabies as she rocked on her chair. Then in 1900, Dr. Adolf purchased the home. One day, the neighbors heard a woman screaming in the house and called the police. Once the cops arrived, the doctor was nowhere to be found, but instead there was only a body of a woman with no head. Then a single mother and her 5 children lived there in the 1920s, until a nearby natural gas tank exploded and killed the mother, causing the 5 children to be left abandoned. Although the tale is said to be fabricated, many of these stories are actually true. At number 7, we have the Squonk. When I saw this guy, I couldn't help but laugh. And the only reason I added him on this list was because he was a mythical creature, and come on, he's terrifyingly cute and ugly at the same time. The Squonk is a pig hybrid that almost has decaying skin that is covered in warts. Its tusks are yellow and crooked with cauliflower ears, looking like any MMA fighter. It appears to be crying because it just thinks it's ugly, which is just so freaking sad. I kinda wanna just give it a hug. Except if you try, hunters claim that the creature turns into a puddle of tears. A man named J.P. Wentling was said to have captured the Squonk in a bag, but once he went to go show everyone, the thing that remained was only the liquid of the creature. Some believe the Squonks can predict the future and will accept something in exchange for this. However, since they are pessimistic creatures, only the bad parts of your future will be mentioned. So this is basically like having a fortune teller who just hates their life. At number 6 spot, with Albawitch. In the forest of Columbia, Pennsylvania is a 4-foot tall hairy creature known as the Albawitch. Their name is just short for apple snitch, since they are known to be snatching apples left and right like they're trying to miss a day at the doctor's. People who walk along the Susquehanna River claim to have these small creatures violently throw apples at them to push them away from their homes. Their homes are said to be on top of the treetops where they would only come down to gather apples. These hairy humanoids are often mistaken as Bigfoot since they're also reported around the area. What if these guys are just Bigfoot children? This would explain their small stature at least. Despite the fact that these creatures are not likely to cause death, getting apples thrown at you aggressively doesn't sound too appealing either. In the hump of our list, we have the Appalachian Trail. From Maine all the way to Georgia, the Appalachian Trail is a 2,200-mile stretch that is also the longest hiking only trail in the world. This place is known for its beauty. Every mile is filled with fresh sights and breathtaking views. But when you have this much of inhabited land, some things are bound to happen to those visiting the area. Many hikers who have trekked this path have shared their haunting stories online for those to see, and it's crazy the amount of stories I read. So many it almost seems like it isn't a coincidence. Some have mentioned encountering the mountain people while on their hike, saying that they protect their camps with extreme violence and they have a tent-like city within these trails. Apart from the mountain men, the trail has had over 10 homicides. The first one happened in 1974 in Georgia and 3 in Pennsylvania. Then in 1990, a double murder took place at the top of Cove Mountain located within Pennsylvania. A young 25 and 26-year-old couple was shot and stabbed to death by a wanted criminal. The details of this crime are horrific, so I probably won't mention the specifics here. At a number 4 spot, we have No Face Charlie. If you grew up in the 1950s and 60s in western Pennsylvania, chances are you heard the legend of the Green Man or No Face Charlie. The legend says that No Face Charlie would stalk the remote streets at night and sometimes chase others away from him. No disrespect, but if I saw him at night, I would definitely be running the other way. No Face Charlie was actually based on a real man named Raymond Robinson. His story is pretty tragic. In 1919, Robinson was only 8 years old when he was reaching for a bird's nest at the top of an electrical pole when he was suddenly shocked with 11,000 volts of electricity. He was severely injured. His nose, lips, and ears, and also eyes were all gone or misshapen. And on top of that, one of his hands were completely blown off. This is what gave him this image that appears haunting for others. Raymond was in fact a really kind and friendly individual, but others feared him and would give him this negative stigma regardless of how he really was on the inside. He has now since passed, and I hope he's finally accepted for who he is. At number 3 spot, we have Blue Mist Road. Blue Mist Road is actually named Irwin Road, and locals claim that you can see a blue mist covering the entire road at night. Back in the 1800s, it was a dirt road, and even to this day, it still remains unpaved. The road has way too many tragic stories to tell you in one single single point, but let me tell you a few of these. This place has a very dark history to it. Legends claim that a witch lived on this road who used to practice black magic, including rituals and human sacrifice. A family lived here, and one day the husband came home in a trance-like state and murdered his entire family. At number 2 spot, we have Anna Baker's dress. This dress belonged to Anna Baker, who was a part of a wealthy family located in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They would reside in what is known now as the Baker Mansion in 1849. The same year, Anna fell in love with a man and planned to get married, but her father Elias was like, no, that's not happening. It's believed he said no because he was part of a different social class. He didn't want this marriage to happen so bad he even got the man banished from the town. Anna was heartbroken and begged her dad, but her dad kept saying no. She then went out of her way to buy her own dress, the one in the photo, and showed her father, and he was still very adamant on the decision to say no. So in spite of her father, she was never married even after his death. Fast forward to 1922, all the members of the Baker family passed away, and the mansion had been bought up by the Blair County Historical Society and turned into a museum. In the museum, guests report seeing the glass of the dress being shaken violently. Others report seeing a woman apparition in a black dress staring into this display. Perhaps it's Anna from the grave, but we'll never know. At number 1 spot, we have the Devil's Road. Yup, nothing good about this one. Night Shyamalan filmed his 2004 horror film The Village in a nearby field because this creepy area just north of the Delaware border is so infused with ghostly tales. Rumor has it that a white house hidden in the wood on Devil's Road, officially named Cosart Road, was home to the family of the DuPonts, a wealthy family who resorted to inbreeding to keep their fortune within the family. The cult house, as it was known, was used to perform incestuous marriages and to conceal deformed offspring. The trees in the area have a dramatic bend away from the house, as if they're attempting to flee away from it. Coming in at number 10, we have 13 Curves. This is a very dangerous road in Marcellus, New York, named the 13 Curves. Over the past 60 years since its construction, this road claimed the lives of many drivers from unfortunate accidents. None are more notorious than the story of a couple on their wedding day. Drivers claim they see a young woman dressed in a bloody white wedding gown walking along the road looking for her groom. All of the accidents on this road are said to be associated with this one woman, since many of the survivors of these accidents claim that the last thing they saw before crashing was in fact this woman in white. This story is very similar to La Llorona if you guys remember my past videos. That is in the Texas video. How the woman passed away in the first place remains a complete mystery, but some claim that on their wedding night the couple drove on these winding roads, but on one of the curves they lost control and ended up in a nearby creek, with both of them passing away. Other drivers claim that they enter into their cars, and many of them become startled and crash when they look in their rearview mirror to see this bloody apparition. At a number 9 spot, we have the Fordham University Spirit Story. Before we begin, scenes from The Exorcist were shot here, so it was probably for good reason since they wanted to shoot a horror film at this university filled with the supernatural. In the summer of 2003, RAs in the place noticed that in one room the beds were propped up rather than lying on the floor. It wasn't until one day an RA awoke from knocking on his door. When he opened it, he saw a Jesuit priest who said he would take care of the mattresses. Except when the RA tried to figure out who the priest was, he discovered that the only Jesuit priest bearing that description had passed away 10 years ago. That's not all the ghosts within this university. It's said that the spirit of a little girl who has been seen in the bathrooms is said to lurk and peek behind the shower curtains. Many other students revealed that they had sleep paralysis when inside the dorms, even though they had no such thing prior. Lastly, other students report being woken up due to the feeling of someone grabbing their neck and tugging their legs as if someone wants to drag them. At a number 8 spot, we have Rochester's White Lady. There's a white lady scary urban legend in almost all cultures, so I had to mention one in New York as well. In Eastman Durham Park, visitors claim to see a crying woman asking where her daughter is. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a woman named Elisa lived in the area with her farmer husband. After a seemingly good start to their new home in Rochester, tragedy struck when Elisa's daughter suddenly disappeared. The story of her disappearance varies, but the most popular one is that the daughter asked Elisa if she can walk to the lake, but she never ended up returning. Regardless of what version you believe, the result is the same. People see the white lady roam the perimeters of the lake, constantly wailing and asking for the location of her daughter. People claim that she is more aggressive towards men, but appears as more heartfelt and sorrowful for women. This could be because women are more likely to assist her in finding her daughter, but much of it is unknown. At a number 7 spot, we have the White Horse Tavern. This tavern was established all the way back in 1673, making it America's oldest tavern, as you can see from the sign in the front of the building. During the 18th century, the owner of the bar was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler, and when the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out in this tavern during the Revolutionary War and brought in many other soldiers with him, where a lot of them would pass away in that tavern. The most activity in the tavern is said to be located on the second floor in the master bedroom. Story goes that a young girl passed away from smallpox in that room, and many guests hear the little girl singing, and some workers claim they see a little girl running around with a lemon and lime knife looking to attack unsuspecting victims. And remember that pirate owner I mentioned? Yeah, he would end up murdering someone in that very room, but that's all up for speculation still. Regardless, the world's oldest tavern had to have a few of their own ghost stories. At our number 6 spot, we have the Rolling Hills Asylum. Located in East Bethany, New York, this asylum was originally named the Genesee County Poor Farm. A poorhouse is a place where orphan children, families, the elderly, and where physically and mentally handicapped people go. All the people who passed away at the asylum were buried on the property grounds, which led many people to believe to be haunted throughout the entire area. The favorite entity spotted there is called Roy Crouse. The owner had an encounter with Roy the ghost. One day she went in and a rat went across the room. The rat startled her, and then she went to scream and then left the asylum. The next day when she came back, she noticed a rat that startled her was found dead on the stairs with blood oozing out of it. Above that was a bloody handprint, presumably with the blood of the rat. She believes it was Roy helping her, as the rat scared her pretty bad. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Curse of 1940. The Curse of 1940, or the Dutton's Curse, was a hex that was believed to cause NHL's New York Rangers not to win a Stanley Cup between 1941 all up until 1993. For all you non-hockey fans, the New York Rangers were very successful in their early years when they took 3 Stanley Cups, 1928, 1933, and 1940. After a 54-year wait, they won another Stanley Cup in 1994, but many fans believe the reason they haven't touched gold in so long is because of this curse. This was because in the 1939-40 season, the mortgage of the Madison Square Garden, which is the place where the Rangers played, was paid off, which led to management to burn the entire mortgage in the bowl of the cup. This led many to believe that the hockey gods put a curse on them. For example, in the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers had to play in the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto for their home ice, which could be related to the fact that the MSG burned their mortgage, forcing them to play in another city, hence why they didn't win that year. I know sports curses are not scary at all, but for New York Rangers fans, this is the most terrifying thing they heard all year. At our number 4 spot, we have Palmyra Historical Museum. As the name suggests, this museum is located in Palmyra, New York. This building is thought to be over 200 years old and once served as a tavern and a hotel. It is now open to the public as a museum, but there's a reason why this one is on the list. The story goes that 6 days before Christmas 1964, a fire raged a small home which had Ruth Anna Breeden, her husband Paul, and 6 children inside. It was a supposed flash fire which engulfed the entire house quickly. The husband managed to escape, but the mother and her 6 children were found burnt in the basement underneath a mattress. Although the fire didn't happen in the museum per se, it sits on the home's foundation, meaning the basement is the exact same. This is why many guests claim to catch the scent of ash in the basement, because this is where the woman and her children lost their life. In the museum, guests also report toys being flown off shelves and even feeling their hair and clothes being tugged on. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Vale Cemetery. After being opened in 1857, the historic Vale Cemetery became the largest cemetery in Schenectady, New York. After many years, guests will report some pretty eerie paranormal activity going on inside the cemetery. Many people had come forward, all reporting the same phenomenon, saying that the statues would bleed from their eyes. It's very important to note that all the people that came forward were not related in any sort of way, making all these accounts really genuine. Other people visiting the cemetery also claim that they've seen figures sitting in the trees above the tombstones, and even full-blown apparitions of crying ghosts. The cemetery now has a total of 33,000 assigned plots, making it a spiritual hub. At our number 2 spot, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. Back when New York was just a small village, reports surfaced of a spooky ship floating on the river. Seen at dusk on foggy days, many say it was the spirit of the Henry Hudson's Half Moon ship. One of the reports came from an anonymous source of the weather dork that they referred to as Samuel. He was spending the day fishing on the shore of the Hudson, but then an odd ship caught his gaze. He claimed the ship was floating on air above the water, but as the ship got closer to him, he found that it had no crew on deck and had 3 empty masts. Regardless of the fact that it was floating, the ship could only be heard when it got closer, and the wood would be creaking as if it was on water when it wasn't. Eventually, a storm came and slowly brought the ship back into the river, slowly disappearing into the darkness and the rain. If you listen to this story and get some Flying Dutchman vibes, you're right. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Amityville Horror House. It all started with an invitation from a news anchorman in Long Island. All the Warrens knew that there was a tragedy inside of the home, and the owners left after only living at the home for little less than a month. After Ed Warren spoke to the owner of the home, George Lutz, he quickly agreed to have them investigate. George was so horrified by the house that he only left the keys to the house and completely left the area. When the Warrens were in the house, they described feeling a powerful negative energy, calling it, quote, diabolically infested. Ed then entered the basement and felt immediate pressure, which pinned him on the floor. He commanded to Jesus Christ to leave, and it lifted it off of him. This was no regular paranormal case. The Warrens were unaware that 6 people were murdered in that home 7 months ago, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that one night.
California is huge and is full of the scariest urban legends, and it's insane I'm just doing 10 of these because there's a lot more. But I'm your host Makayla, so let's get into it. Kicking it off at number 10, Ghost of Stowe Lake. San Francisco's Golden Gate Park is home to one of the city's most famous ghosts. Stowe Lake is said to be haunted by the spirit of a woman who, after attempting to save her child, who fell in the water, drowned in the lake. Legend says that this woman, referred to as the White Lady, wanders the edges of Stowe Lake as she searches for her child. She can even be summoned by visitors. It's said that the most active area surrounding the lake is near the Pioneer Woman and Children's statue. Ghost seekers can summon the woman by calling out, White Lady, I have your baby," 3 times. If she believes you, the woman will appear before you and will ask for her baby back. The legend bewars both skeptics and believers from doing this, because if you tell her you have her baby, the woman will haunt you for the rest of your life. If you tell the woman you don't have her baby after summoning her, legend says she will drag you into Stowe Lake and you will suffer the same fate she did in the lake. Now at number 9, the Dark Watchers. This legend takes place in the Santa Lucia Mountains, which run from Avila Beach to Monterey. The Dark Watchers are said to be giant phantoms that resemble humans and lurk inside the mountain. Legend goes that the Dark Watchers can only be seen at midnight, as they stand at the mountain's tops. They've only been claimed to be seen staring out into the wide space below the mountains, before completely vanishing into thin air. Coming in at number 8, Monster of Elizabeth Lake. Elizabeth Lake in California is said to have an evil presence below the water's surface. Elizabeth Lake is just outside Lancaster in LA. It's said to have been created by the devil himself to keep his hellish pets. The urban legend says that the passageway to hell can be found if you swim deep into the lake. The first sighting of the monster of Elizabeth Lake dates back to 1880. The monster is said to have the neck of a giraffe, head of a bulldog, bat wings, estimated to be about 50 feet long, and smells of decay. Sightings of the monster of Elizabeth Lake continue to be reported and strike fear in the locals. Here at number 7, the hauntings of Turnbull Canyon. In the Puente Hills Preserve near Witter Turnbull Canyon is a popular hiking site in the preserve. It was previously referred to as Harakanuga, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, which translates to the place of the devil. According to the legend, the region is haunted by the Indians who were executed for not converting to Catholicism. Their spirits are believed to be lingering inside the depths of the canyon, waiting to get out. Many years later, Turnbull became the site of numerous satanic rituals held by people who mysteriously disappeared. What was left behind from the rituals were paranormal sightings and occurrences, reported by both locals and freaked out hikers. Taking number 6, the Billywhack Monster. Rumors of an alleged beast have been going on around since the 1940s at the site of the former Billywhack Dairy in Ventura County. August Rubel, a German national living in the United States during World War II, owned the dairy. It was rumored that August had a secret underground lab beneath the dairy, where he was working with the US government to build a super soldier for war. He returned to Germany in 1943 as he was supposedly working for the Allies. During the trip, August allegedly stepped on a German landmine and passed away. Years later, reports of a strange creature roaming the area where the now abandoned dairy stood started to surface. Many of these reports came from local high school students who told police that a large humanoid with goat-like horns and sharp claws was hurling rocks at their car. Halfway at number 5, Alcatraz Demon. San Francisco's Alcatraz Island has plenty of ghosts and disturbing rumors about its former inmates, one of which is the Alcatraz Demon. The story is that a prisoner was ranting about a demon in his cell. The guards ignored his cries, knowing that many of the prisoners were mentally ill and prone to seeing things. The next morning, the prisoner was found strangled in his cell, with no evidence or means that someone else had been in or out of the cell. There were also a lot of other ghost stories surrounding Alcatraz. Here at number 4, the Hollywood Sign Spirit. This is probably one of the most infamous urban legends in California. The Hollywood sign is said to be haunted by the early 1900s actress Peg Entwistle. When a possible career-ending review was published about one of her films, Peg climbed to the top of the sign's H and jumped off of it. She is said to haunt the sign and the surrounding area. The legend continues to state that she will appear to people hiking to the off-limits part of the sign where she had taken her life. Instead of the sweet Hollywood actress, what appears to these unfortunate people is a woman with a skeletal face and deep hollowed-out eyes. If those hikers are alone, she is said to somehow influence them to share her same fate. Now at number 3, Ghost Hills. Basic laws of gravity state that what goes up must come down. While in California, there are spots that are rumored to defy this basic truth. If you park at the base of a hill in a specified location and release your parking brake, your car will roll uphill. These spots are hard to find but are often accompanied by a legend as its explanation. A school bus broke down and the kids jumped out to push it up the hill, but lost control and the bus ran over them, taking their lives. Now they push cars up hills as ghosts. Here at number 2, Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is a serial killer who operated in Northern California in late 1960s. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969, operating in rural, urban, and suburban settings. 2 of his attempted victims fortunately did survive. The Zodiac himself, however, claimed to have taken the lives of 37 victims, and he has been linked to several other cold cases, some in Southern California or outside the state. The Zodiac made the name for himself in a series of taunting letters and cards that he mailed to regional newspapers, threatening execution sprees and bombings if they were not printed. Some of the letters included cryptograms or ciphers, in which the Zodiac claimed that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. Of the 4 ciphers he produced, 2 remain unsolved, and only 1 was cracked in 2020. The Zodiac stopped written communications around 1974. The unusual nature of this case led to the international interest that has sustained throughout the years. The case also still remains open in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac since 1969. Although in late 2021, a team of specialists who investigate cold cases say they identified the Zodiac Killer as Gary Francis Post, who passed away in 2018. The team's years of digging uncovered new forensic evidence and photos from his darkroom. One image features a scar on the forehead of Gary's that matches a scar on a sketch of the Zodiac. It's insane that he stopped communication in 1974 and passed away in 2018, but they only identified him last year. Coming in at number 1, the Charman. The Charman's origin story is quite gruesome. A father and son were both caught in a house fire and horribly burnt in 1948. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable that he executed his father. When the police found the son, he was so unrecognizably burnt, they didn't realize he was alive. So he ran away before they were able to arrest him for what he did to his father. The story goes that ever since then, the Charman can be spotted wandering the woods surrounding Ojai, occasionally approaching tents of innocent campers or pretending to be a hitchhiker and then attempting to attack them.
Yeehaw! We are talking about Texas today, and if you're from Texas, you're in for a treat. Cause I'm your host Andrew, and here are your top 10 scary urban legends from Texas. At our number 10 spot, we have the Candy Lady. In the early 1900s, children in the rural town of Terrell, Texas started to go missing. Some of the residents blamed it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's home windows just before bedtime. As the parents began to fall asleep, it'll encourage children to grab the candy, but as they try to grab it, the lady grabs them and feasts on their sugar-laden blood until there isn't any left. A farmer allegedly found rotten teeth on his farm and later found the body of a boy with his pockets stuffed with candy. Many people believe that Candy Lady is in fact real and went by the name of Clara Crane. Clara Crane was accused of poisoning her husband back in 1895 with poison-laced caramel candies, but that's not all. 5 years before the incident, Crane's 5-year-old daughter passed away from unknown causes, which many believe that she poisoned her daughter as well. At our number 9 spot, we have La Llorona. This legend originates from El Paso, Texas. Almost all Latin cultures know the story of La Llorona, and the people of El Paso are no exception to that. La Llorona directly translates to the weeping woman, which perfectly describes the behavior of this malevolent spirit. She is said to haunt the riverbanks of the Rio Grande, where she is searching for her 2 children whom she had already drowned in that very river. Now there are many iterations of the story, but I'll just mention the most popular one. The legend goes that a lady found her boyfriend with another woman. After a heated argument between the two, the woman was heartbroken and wanted to get revenge, so she took the children and proceeded to drown them in the Rio Grande River in Texas. It's also said that when she was done throwing her children into the river, she went back to her lover's home home with a bloody wedding gown, showing her she would do whatever it took to be with him. It's said to be the reason why many children disappear in that very area, and she supposedly takes other children to fill the void she lost. So if you're in the area, beware of a woman weeping in a wedding gown who is sitting by the Rio Grande. At a number 8 spot with El Cucuy. This creature is known as South Texas' official boogeyman. There are many versions of El Cucuy since it already originates in Mexico as well. It's said that this monster kidnaps children who misbehave and takes them back to the mountain where he lives to devour them. He appears as a hairless creature with an enormous head that dwarfs his spider-like body. He also has these large red glowing eyes, red ears to hear everything, and razor sharp fangs and claws to accompany that. The origin of El Cucuy goes that a man was suffering with tuberculosis. Desperate to cure himself, he fetched an African witch doctor. The doctor told him to drink a child's blood, but as he did, he started to turn into the monster described. Ever since, he has a never-ending thirst for children's blood. At a number 7, we have the Screaming Bridge. In North Arlington, Texas, 50 years ago, there was a group of teenage girls driving home from a football game. The bridge was designed to only fit one car at a time, and I know, what a dumb bridge, but this was in the past and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The girls weren't paying attention and went full speed over the bridge until a car with no headlights struck them head on, with all of the girls passing away. Some say when they go near the bridge, they can hear the distant screams sounding like the girls before they passed away. As well, if you go over the bridge and look down at the water below, you can see the tombstones of all the girls with their names and birthdays written on it. At number 6 spot, we have the Goatman's Bridge. Why are there so many haunted bridges? Like, I don't get it. But in Denton County, Texas, lies the Goatman's Bridge, which was built in 1884. This bridge is supposedly haunted by the ghost of the Goat Man. The story goes that a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was renowned for quality meat, milk, and cheeses, and then he moved with his family just north of the bridge. Except when he arrived in this area, he was instantly the target of racial hate crime. The racist townfolk came together and burned down the farm with the family inside. They then threw Oscar's body over that very bridge. Now he appears as a half goat, half man humanoid that reeks of decaying flesh. If you knock on the bridge 3 times, it said that you can summon the Goat Man, but now others use this area for rituals and other supernatural activities. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Lady of White Rock Lake. The lake is located in Dallas, Texas, and many visitors claim that they spot a drenched young woman who appears crawling out of the water or asking to fetch a ride. When many people offer her this ride, she disappears out of thin air and leaves a bloody wet seat mark and a terrified driver. Even though many of the drivers were scared to their core, some decide to go to the address given to them by the girl. When they arrive at the door, they're all met by the same man who tells them that his daughter had gone sailing and never came back. Many people believe the story is inspired by the 1953 book Neiman Marcus, Texas, the story of the Proud Dallas Store, and according to the book, McLaughhlin and his wife are driving home late one night in East Dallas when a young, beautiful blonde girl ghost appears on the road. Her elegant dresses is naturally wet and she seems to be in trouble. She gives them an address on Gaston Avenue and asks them to be taken home, but as they drive, she disappears, leaving only a mark. At our number 4 spot, we have the Lake Worth Monster. You just learned about the Goatman, right? Well, this is basically the Goatman, but of the lake. This monster terrorized the people of the town for years, with many describing the creature as being 7 feet tall, around 300 pounds, long-necked, flopped-eared, pot-bellied, covered in white scales and hair. I swear I just described Shaquille O'Neal. The monster was supposedly captured on camera, but you guys be the judge of that one. It looks like a 2-year-old drew on a camera lens on a potato with a crayon and then took this photo. But who knows, it might be real. This beast was inspired by Sally Ann Clark's book, The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Lake, Fort Worth, Texas. In the book, the monster jumped on the hood of someone's car and shook up the car so badly that they got caught in a bad accident. The people described it being a 7 feet tall being covered in scales and fur and resembled a half goat and half man. Pretty scary if you ask me. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Donkey Lady. The Donkey Lady of San Antonio, Texas dates all the way back in the late 1800s. The Donkey Lady was once a beautiful woman with children and a husband, but one day in a rage, the husband burned down the house with the children and wife still inside. The children passed away, but however, the wife managed to survive, but suffered greatly from this. Her toes and fingers would be fused together in a hoove-like way, and her face was melted and sagging, inspiring the Donkey Lady name. There's a bridge in South San Antonio named the Old Applewhite Bridge or the Donkey Lady Bridge. This is the bridge she went to crown after this horrible tragedy. Now it's said if you go to the bridge after midnight and call out the Donkey Lady, she will appear just before you. Some have claimed she had run at people who call out her name, or sometimes just stalks in the forest line waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. At number 2 spot, we have the girl who danced dance with the devil. The story takes place in the 1970s in San Antonio, Texas, with a young Mexican girl named Rosa. One day the girl wanted to attend a dance at a nearby nightclub named the El Cabaroncito. However, the parents were very strict and didn't want her anywhere near the nightclub. Despite their orders, she snuck out of her house and traveled all the way to the nightclub where she could finally have her dance. At the club, Rosa was approached by this very tall, charming, and well-dressed man who asked her permission to dance. When they began dancing, Rosa was terrified when she discovered he had goat hooves instead of feet. When she screamed in terror, people in the club started to chase him out, but as he got close, he vanished out of thin air, leaving a trail of smoke and the smell of sulfur. Devil activity if that wasn't enough. It's said that the area surrounding the nightclub still smells of sulfur to this day. At a number 1 spot with El Muerto. El Muerto, otherwise known as the Headless Horseman of Texas, is a Texas legend that dates all the way back in the mid-1800s. The story goes that 2 rangers, Creed Taylor and William Bigfoot Wallace, were hunting a criminal known as Vidal along the Mexican border. Vidal had been wreaking havoc all across the state of Texas, so when the ranger caught them, they wanted to set an example. So they did just that and cut his head clean off. They then tied his head to the saddle and sent his horse with the headless body running off into the night. Now the horse continued to explore the region with its headless rider. The tale of El Muerto began to grow after it was reported that both had been seen numerous times and that gunshots had no impact on either of them. Spotting El Muerto was thought to foreshadow bad luck because everyone who claimed to have seen him was struck with a series of bad luck and poor health following it.
Today we are talking about top 10 Utah scary urban legends, so let's get started. Starting off at number 10, the Voodoo Caves. Located in the Beaver Dam Mountains is a pipe known as the Voodoo Caves. According to local lore practitioners of dark magic performed countless rituals inside the pipe, leaving behind an evil residual energy that curses or takes the lives of those who enter. It's believed if anyone within the cave insults Satan or makes any derogatory remarks about the entity that lurks there, they will find themselves trapped inside by rising water. The malevolent force got the blame for the passing of a worker who went inside the underground pipe to remove a clog when he got pinned down and drowned. Now at number 9, Bear Lake Monster. The urban legend of the Bear Lake Monster goes back to at least 1868, when desert news reporter Joseph C. Rich ran a series about the serpent-like creature. The series quoted many well-known citizens who all claimed they'd seen the monster. However, in 1888, Mr. Rich admitted that he'd made all the stories up. The legend continues, however. Every so often, someone does claim they have seen the Bear Lake creature, which coincidentally resembles the Loch Ness Monster legend in Scotland. Here at number 8, the legend of Lillian Gray. In the middle of Salt Lake City Cemetery sits a gravestone reading Lily E. Gray, June 6, 1881 to November 14, 1958. Accompanied by the very ominous phrase, "Victim of the Beast 666. Lillian remains a mystery and her headstone forms the source of wild tales of her being a sacrifice to Satan, or that she herself was a Satanist. Some have speculated that she was another innocent woman accused of witchcraft. Another theory, because Utah is clearly full of ominous places, proposes she died on Highway 666, which is also one of the country's most infamously dangerous freeways. Coming in at number 7, Skinwalker Ranch. The Sherman Ranch in Ballard, Utah is better known to locals and paranormal investigators as the Skinwalker Ranch, or the UFO Ranch. The name comes from the alarming number of alleged skinwalker sightings and reports of paranormal and UFO-related phenomena. The 40-acre ranch borders the Indian reservation and has a history of mutilated cattle, spirit orbs, unidentified objects hovering in the sky, and what's been described as a large, red-eyed beast similar to the Native American depictions of skinwalkers, half-human, half-animal monstrosities. Now coming in at number 6, the ghost of Red Lopez. In early 1915, Bingham miners began hearing a voice, supposedly the ghost of Rafael Red Lopez. According to an article in the February 2nd, 1915 edition of the Ogden Daily Standard, Lopez was a miner who shot and took the life of another miner in November 1913. He also reportedly took the life of Bingham's police chief and 2 sheriff deputies in an ambush later that day. A week later, he then reportedly took the lives of 2 other deputies during a manhunt for him that lasted into 1914. But Lopez was never found or heard from again in Utah. It's still one of the state's largest crime mysteries that wasn't closed until 2003. Back in 1915, the report stated that the workers began to be terrorized during the past few days by the shoutings of a gloomy voice in an area of the mine where 2 of the deputies passed away. Halfway at number 5, teen in a tanning bed. The urban legend about the bride cooking herself in a tanning bed circulated all over the country, but it allegedly originated in Utah with a teenage girl. The story begins with a 17-year-old winning a trip to Hawaii, and naturally she wanted to get bronzed before her trip. Though limits exist for how long and how often often you can sit in these tanning beds. The girl, however, supposedly found a way around this rule by hopping around town to town to different salons, 4 to be exact, in just one afternoon. She eventually ended up in Utah Valley Regional Medical Center because her internal organs were shutting down and she went blind from cooking herself all day. Now, a reminder, this one is just an urban legend. Now at number 4, the lady in purple. Over the years, many people have claimed to have seen a woman dressed in purple who appears angry or unhappy inside the Rio Grande Depot in Salt Lake City. In 2017, Rio Grande Cafe manager Colleen Murphy told KSL-TV she has seen lights come on at night in a locked room at the bottom of a stairwell with nobody seemingly there to turn them on. She also said that she had been locked out of the building on multiple occasions late at night, with no real explanation. Others have told her they've heard singing at night, coming from the woman's bathroom in the depot, even when the building is seemingly empty. As the legend goes, the woman tossed her engagement ring onto the tracks during an argument with her fiancé at the depot. Deciding she had made a mistake, she jumped down to retrieve the ring when she was struck and unfortunately passed away by an oncoming train. Now at number 3, the inmate. Salt Lake Herald-Republican on January 8, 1905 reported a frightening tale from the Salt Lake City jail. 2 women at the jail reported they had seen a ghost there, walking the halls at night. The ghost was a man who wore a slouch hat pulled over his eyes and would peer through the grating in the building. They told the newspaper that the ghost was that of a former inmate who had died there in a gruesome manner. On one particular night, one of the women said that she heard a ghost noise by a door, then walked up and asked if it was indeed the dead inmate. "Ain't you dead?" she asked. By way of reply, the ghost began to prance up and down the narrow hallway, swinging his arms and smiling, laughing, and shaking his head. While they never saw the man the day he died, they told the newspaper they were convinced it was him. Now at number 2, the Devil's Highway, kinda like what we mentioned before. The highway system, originally named Route 666 and nicknamed the Devil's Highway, crossed through an area of the United States known as the Four Corners, the meeting space of Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. All 4 states have reported paranormal experiences while on this stretch of highway. Tales range from hellhounds chasing alongside cars and slashing tires to skinwalkers shifting from animal to man before their very eyes, to an evil shaman who appears in the backseat to steal the driver's soul. Like many roads, Highway 666 also hosts a ghostly hitchhiker, a mysterious young woman in a nightgown walking the road alone. When someone tries to offer her a ride, she vanishes. A popular legend attached to the Devil's Highway is that of a mad trucker, a phantom semi-truck that terrorizes late-night drivers before disappearing. One witness reported her husband's experience. Allegedly, he was driving on Route 666 one night when a semi-truck began heading straight for him down the middle of the highway. He said the truck had to have been going around 130 miles per hour, with sparks and flames flying up from the wheels. He pulled off the road in time to miss what he thought would be a fiery collision, and the beast of a vehicle took off into the night. Now coming in at number 1, the haunted Old Main. Everyone who has passed through the Southern Utah University campus has heard the lore of Virginia Loomis and Old Main, a building on the university's campus. As the legend goes, Virginia Loomis's life was taken in the late 1800s. Her body was discovered on the boulder used to make many of the bricks to construct the Cedar City building in 1898. It's said some of the bricks even contain her blood. Later in life, a janitor was hired at the university. On his first day of work, he was allegedly lighting the old coal furnace in Old Main's basement when something caused the furnace door to slam shut on his arm. He was supposedly burned until he passed away, unable to get free, becoming the human torch that burned Old Main to the ground in 1948. It's said that the ghost of Virginia was seen laughing in the flames, and Virginia was written on the janitor's skull.
To start off our list at number 10, we have the Bunny Man Bridge. In 1904, not far from this bridge, in Fairfax Station, Virginia, was a mental asylum. Nearby residents didn't like the fact that the mental patients were near their new homes, so they had it shut down. While the patients of the asylums were being transported, their bus crashed, and all were found except for one, by the name of Douglas Griffin, who disappeared to the nearby woods. After this disappearance, dead bunnies would be littered all over the forest floors and trees with attempts to consume them. And then finally, on Halloween night, Douglas Griffin struck and killed a group of teenagers that were hanging out near the bridge. He then proceeded to gut and hang all of them as if they were bunnies he had hunted. A police report soon came in about a man in all white with a bunny mask throwing a hatchet at a car, which would eventually give way to this urban legend. Stealing our number 9 spot, we have the Ferry State Plantation House. With 11 spirits calling the Ferry State Plantation House their home, Haunted House seems a fair title for this site. Now used as a museum and educational center, the house also offers Halloween tours called the Stroll of Lost Souls, and is a regular site for ghost hunters and paranormal activity groups. The story goes that this house was used originally as a school, tavern, and eventually a mansion. Once the mansion had burned down in 1828, it was reconstructed by abused and mistreated slaves. The house's many spirits included the woman in white, who fell from the stairs, and the slave named Sally Walk, who is said to be still grieving for her late fiance. But the most famous is Grace Sherwood, who is named the Witch of Pungo. She was in fact the last person convicted of witchcraft in Virginia, having to spend 7 years in jail and later being released. When she had passed away, reports say that her body disappeared without a trace, leaving many people to believe that she was truly a witch. Here at our number 8 spot, we have the ghost of Sarah Henry. Patrick Henry, an American patriot who coined the famous term, "Give me liberty or give me death," lived at Scotchtown with his wife Sarah and their 6 children. Everything was normal and fine until Sarah gave birth to their 6 children. Following that, she would show signs of mental illness, and at this time, mental illness was not a defined term and would often be associated with the devil instead. Henry decided to keep his wife hidden in the basement of his home, hidden from the public to protect his family's image, with people often saying that she was possessed by a demon. As time passed, Sarah would become more violent, eventually having to be in a straitjacket. And after her death in 1775, she was buried in an unmarked grave. It's said to this day, a woman in a long white gown appears in and around the house, just standing there, showing that maybe Sarah was not ready to leave her home, even when her family did. Coming in at number 7, we have the Poorhouse Road Tunnel. This tunnel was built in the early 1900s as part of the railway in Virginia that ran between Staunton and Lexington. It didn't take long for the tunnel to acquire a tragic reputation though. The story goes about 2 young girls playing in a nearby woods when all of a sudden a stranger had approached them, appearing friendly at first, but quickly turned sinister and decided to execute both girls. Now it's said that the voices of these girls cry from the darkness of the tunnel, and once you begin to walk through, you may begin to hear the whispers from the girls. Some other haunted reports include the appearance of handprints on cars, fog appearing in photographs when it is not visible, and the sound of disembodied voices. Guess you can say it's a poor choice to travel to Poorhouse Road. Straight out of a Twilight movie, at number 6 we have the Richmond Vampire. However, this is not your ordinary vampire. The story goes that in 1925, the Churchill train tunnel collapsed with workers still inside. Now, the tragedy of that is very real, but surprisingly in the wreckage, a bloody man appeared with jagged teeth and skin hanging off his bones. Everyone had thought it was just a mere survivor of the incident, but here is where it gets weirder. As they got closer to the man quickly jumped and ran away to the nearby Hollywood Cemetery and disappeared into a mausoleum within. They say the vampire still inhabits the cemetery grounds, which has led many satanic and cult groups to visit and attempt to summon the vampire once again. At the middle of our list, we have St. Albans Sanatorium. Before St. Albans was a sanatorium, it was the site of the Draper's Meadow Massacre. Shawnee Indians beheaded, tomahawked, and even bashed in the skulls of the settlers in the 1700s, and took the survivors back with them to their village. Then, during the Civil War, the area was bombarded by artillery during the Battle of Cloyd's Mountain. People claim to see the smoke and hear the sounds of the artillery fire from the Civil War. Once it became a sanatorium, patients suffered inhumane experimental treatments that left some disabled for life due to its controversial treatment and care. The combination of the bloody history of the land along with the misery within the sanatorium created a perfect storm of paranormal activity, which is why St. Albans Sanatorium is considered to be one of the most haunted places in Virginia. Coming in at number 4, we have the Martha Washington Inn. The mansion was built in 1832 and functioned as an all-female college. But when the Civil War was happening, the college was used by the young women to nurse the injured. During this time, there's a story of one of the nurses who played her violin to one of the wounded soldiers. She sat by his bedside all the time, and eventually, they would fall in love. Unfortunately, the soldier succumbed to his injuries and passed away. The nurse was completely devastated upon hearing the news, and in a few weeks, the woman would follow him in death. It was reported that the music of the violin continues to play in the room of the wounded soldier. This site is now a hotel and a spa, but I don't know how relaxed I could be with its dark history of ghosts. With the number 3 spot, we have the lovely Lover's Leap. Before Europeans settled in Virginia, there was a Shawnee Brave and a Cherokee girl who met in the forest. There was rising tensions between their two tribes. This was like a version of Romeo and Juliet. These two would meet in secret because of the restrictions placed from each of the tribes. But one day, the man visited the spot where they would always meet, which was situated near Duffield, Virginia, on the scenic cliffs. But this time was different. The woman was on the edge, ready to jump, saying that she wouldn't be able to see each other ever again. With that being said, the man decided that the only way they could be together was to kiss and jump off the cliff together. Now, people who visit the area say that they've seen the shadowy figures of a couple on the edge of the cliff, while some say they feel the strong urge to jump off when they come with their significant other. Taking our number 2 spot, we have the Crawford Road. Crawford Road is one of the most haunted roads in Virginia. One of the stories tells of a group of friends that were cruising late at night until they decided to turn up the fun by going down Crawford Road. While driving down the road, they joked, laughed, and sang songs from their brand new CD. Everything had been fine until they had reached the bridge. The track they were listening to on the CD let out a high-pitched, obnoxious screeching sound. The noise lasted for about 10 seconds until they were far enough from the bridge. Then the noise stopped and the CD played as normal. Another incident involved a wedding that took place in the area. The bride was not a happy one and regretted all of her actions, which led her to hang herself by the bridge. As people drove down this road, they would report seeing this woman in a white wedding gown standing on top of the bridge only to jump off and disappear. Now, taking our top spot in our top 10 scary Virginia urban legends, we have the Battle of Cold Harbor. Said to be one of the most haunted battlefields in the United States, it was here that over 150,000 men fought a long, gruesome war, which claimed the lives of over 15,000 men. As the war finished, it was reported that the lack of medical assistance led to dugouts being crammed with both the living and the dead, and those who passed away couldn't even get proper burials. The conditions of the battlefield made this place a living hell for those who had to fight in it, and now it's reported that those who visit experience paranormal occurrences, such as smelling the distinct scent of burned gunpowder or a fog that would appear and disappear in the area, which could be resembling the thick gun smoke from the past battle. Other reports hear the cries and the screams of the dying soldiers waiting for someone to bury them properly. Restless souls are scattered throughout the park, which is why it makes sense that people get an overwhelming sense of sorrow and fear when they walk on that field. Starting us right at number 10, we have the Otterbein Cemetery. It was during the 1840s that James Henry was faced with a dilemma. He had been courting 2 women, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He couldn't decide which one to marry until one day, while going home, Henry ended up falling asleep on the horse he was riding on. The horse would then stop in front of Mary's house. James saw this as a sign and married Mary shortly after. As a wedding gift, James gave Mary the horse that led him there. Their love was so strong, but short-lived, when Mary died in 1845. She was then buried in Otterbein Cemetery, and as fate would have it, Henry would go back and court the other girl, Rachel. But shortly after their new marriage, people began noticing a strange outline of a bloody horseshoe on his late wife's tombstone. James took this as Mary's objection to the new marriage. And perhaps this was true, because days after, strange sounds and sightings were reported in the cemetery. James Henry would be found in his barn, dead, with a mark of a horseshoe visibly on his forehead. Creeping at our number 9 spot, we have Satan's Hollow. Beyond the woods, in a quiet blue ash community, some say exists a portal to hell named Satan's Hollow. Being part of an old sewage system, the tunnels are said to be haunted by a shadow man and other angry spirits. Supernatural markings are seen all over the tunnel walls. Deep inside the tunnels are a supposed altar room where they would commit violent rituals, including sacrificing animals and even humans. Over the years, several ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have visited this site, claiming to have communicated with spirits. Coming in at number 8, we have Athens Asylum. This mental asylum stood from 1874 up until 1993. However, some pretty scary stuff occurred within these walls. Patients were mistreated, physically abused, not fed, strapped to their beds, and even lobotomized, which caused many patients to suffer from life-changing side effects and disabilities. One particular patient named Margaret Schilling went missing in 1979 for 42 days. Her corpse would be later found in an abandoned area in the hospital. The odd thing was that her body was found naked, with her clothes folded neatly beside her, and then her body began rotting so bad that it left a permanent stain behind that could still be seen to this day. In attempts to hide the stain, workers found it impossible to clean up the imprint, and now it's said that the abused patients of this asylum still haunt the building, including the spirit of Margaret. At our number 7 spot, we have the Bloody Bridge. In the 1850s, a bridge that crosses the Miami-Erie Canal was the site of a horrific murder. The story begins with a couple named Bill Jones and Minnie Warren. They started off head over heels over one another, so it was a big surprise when Minnie ended the relationship all of a sudden. Bill was devastated. Meanwhile, the girl seemed to have moved on pretty quickly and began dating a man by the name of Jack Billings instead, and Bill would become a rage-fueled person with full intent to plot his revenge. So on one cold night in 1852, he waited near the bridge that crossed the canal. When the new couple was walking over the bridge, he jumped out of nowhere, slicing Jack's head clean off using an axe, and startled Minnie, which made her fall from the bridge, drowning soon after. This would cause many locals to name it the Bloody Bridge. At our number 6 spot, we have the Loveland Frogmen. This is not so much a scary urban legend, but rather weird, so I couldn't ignore it. The Loveland Frogmen are 4 feet bipedal frogs with a leathery skin and webbed feet. I know, it sounds super silly, but the people who actually encountered the Loveland Frogmen didn't find them funny by any means. Instead, they would shoot farmers, businessmen, and even policemen on sight. One report even said a policeman shot and killed one. Everyone's description of the creature was the same, except the height, making many to believe that there are more than one frogman out there. In the hump of our list, we have the melonheads. In the suburbs of Michigan, Ohio, locals fear humanoids called melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. The legend goes that a doctor named Crow and his wife lived in the woods of Ohio. In a nearby orphanage, he convinced them to kidnap and then conduct experiments on a group of orphan children suffering from hydrocephalus, a condition that caused the kid's head to swell to 3 times the normal size. The tests were both malicious and an ill-fated attempt to save them. These experiments would cause even more swelling and give them an appearance of a melon head. After days of torture, the kids would decide to kill Dr. Crow, and it's said that these kids still survive off the nearby land, only emerging at nights. Taking our number 4 spot, we have the Defiance werewolf. In the summer of 1972, the people of Defiance, Ohio were claiming that they were being terrorized by a lone werewolf. The sightings of this werewolf would be typically at nights nearby the railroad tracks. The beast was reported to be 7 to 9 feet tall, very hairy, and wielding a club. It said that 2 men were working on the tracks at night. One of the 2 men, Ted Davis, would report to police that he was attacked by a half-man, half-dog creature. Luckily for locals, after the summer, the beast almost seemed to vanish out of existence. But the story still lingers, and perhaps a werewolf is still out there, hiding. All the way at number 3, we have the Gore Orphanage. In Vermilion, Ohio, there's a story about an orphanage. During the 1800s, a mysterious fire broke out in a building, trapping all inside, leading to at least 50 deaths. The town was horrified by the event and refused to allow a replacement orphanage to be built on the site. Ohio residents wanted nothing more than just to forget about the tragedy and move on. Out of sight, out of mind, or so they thought. The fire itself is said to have left a stain on the area forever, with reports saying that if you try and approach the old orphanage, you'll be met with many children ghosts roaming around the land and running in the forest. The whereabouts of the remains of the orphanage are never clearly shared, and it appears that the location will forever be a mystery. However, there is a road called Gore Orphanage Road in Ohio, so I think it would be best to start there if you want to see some child apparitions. Here at number 2, we have the Cry Baby Bridge. In Salem, Ohio, there is a bridge just off of Egypt Road. Over the years, this bridge has collected many terrifying stories. but the stories are similar in the sense that it involves a mother and a baby child. Sometime in the 1970s, a young couple decided to picnic near the bridge with their baby. They slowly got distracted by the surroundings and by each other that they didn't notice the baby wandering off away from them. It was not until the baby began to cry, the couple realized their mistake and quickly chased after the sound of their baby. They were too late. The baby had fallen into the water and passed away. In an attempt to save the baby, but mostly devastated by her loss, the mother decided to jump into the water and met the same fate as their baby. Now legend has it that if you go to this bridge, you can hear the ghostly cries of a baby coming underneath the bridge. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have Helltown, Ohio. Boston Mills, now known as Helltown, was bought out by the US government to make way for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. However, rumor has it that this town was closed down because of an accident chemical leak, causing citizens to mutate. To this day, the town remains completely abandoned. However, people who visited the area have reported seeing many disfigured, mutated people hiding throughout the area. And to make matters worse, apparently there is a satanic church located at the town center. The area is littered with even more dark legends, including an old abandoned school bus where a series of murders took place in. It is said that if you peek into the windows, you can see the ghosts of the kids or even the killer behind it. Starting off at number 10, we have the ever popular Hell's Gate Bridge in Oxford, Alabama. This is no London Bridge, despite the fact that it is falling down, but a more sinister bridge that harbors the characteristics of a living hell. Hell's Gate Bridge got its name because it's said that when you stop on the bridge and glance over your shoulder, the road begins to resemble a fiery gates of hell. And if you're not scared from a mere opinion, in 1950, a young couple's car drove directly off the bridge, killing both of them. And it said if you stop at the bridge with your lights off, a member of the couple enter the vehicle and leave a wet spot on your seats. The bridge has now been cemented off due to its poor condition and to stop those who are too curious for their own liking. At number 9, we have the Alaskan Triangle. Imagine the Bermuda Triangle, but cold and on land, and then we have the Alaska Triangle. This is a piece of untouched wilderness where mystery lingers and the unknown spreads. This triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in the area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes, including the Tling tribe, claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Specifically, there is a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka, described to approach those who are lost or weak. And once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from reincarnating. In other words, this place is not the most ideal backpacking spot. You can't believe what we have at number 8. We have the ghost of Stowe Lake. Situated by the largest body of water that borders the beloved Golden Gate Park in California, a young mother and her baby daughter decided to take a stroll and enjoy the scenery. Eventually, the mother would be distracted while speaking to another lady in the park. Due to this distraction, her baby daughter rolled away and ended up in the lake. Like any mother, she started to panic and jumped in the lake attempting to save her daughter. This was the last time the woman was seen. Now, there are reports of women sobbing when there's no one around. And if that wasn't eerie, some have even reported seeing this woman still looking for her baby in the water. And for a bad idea, you can summon her by saying, white lady, I have your baby," 3 times and she will appear. However, this is not recommended. At number 7, we have Charman. In 1948, in Ojai Valley, located in California, there was a large brush fire which destroyed the majority of the valley along with many homes around the area. This fire's devastation made it impossible for those in the affected area to receive any sort of help, which kick-started this urban legend. During the time of the fire, a man and his son who lived in an isolated cabin in the valley found themselves fighting for their own survival. Their house burned down, the father ended up dying from the fire, and the son acquired several deep burns on their skin. This drove the son completely insane, and with his enraged mindset, he hung his father and skinned all of the burned skin from his body. The son eventually disappeared in the darkness of the woods, and it is said that those who wander carelessly in Ojai Valley will encounter the horribly burned charred man, and he will attempt to tear their skin off, just as he did to his father. Coming in at number 6, we have The Dog Boy. Despite the lighthearted name, its story is truly traumatic. In a small Arkansas town was a child named Gerald Bettis, who was supported by 2 loving parents. However, this love would turn to sour. At a young age, Gerald would kidnap and torture dogs, giving him the name, and eventually would thirst for something more sinister. He would move on to humans, specifically his parents. He ended up torturing his parents by imprisoning them in their own home, keeping them there for years. Eventually, the father would pass away in the home, ending his tortured existence, and it's still believed that this house is still haunted from the spirit of Gerald and his father, with consistent light flickers, moving objects, and cold spots. Taking our number 5 spot, we have the Dark Watchers. The Santa Lucia Mountains, or the Santa Lucia Range, is a rugged mountain range located in the coastal area of Central California. For many years, people have looked up at these tall peaks and spotted tall, cloaked figures looking down at them, and in the blink of an eye, they're gone. These 7 to 15 feet tall mystical entities stand motionless, wearing only a black coat and a broad brim hat. Sightings were reported all the way back from the 1700s, when the Spanish had just arrived on the land and noticed these tall dark watchers on the mountain. Despite these entities not doing any physical harm, they're always watching people in the area, making them feel worried and scared of the feeling of not being alone. Here we have at number 4, the Hugging Molly. In Abbeville, Alabama, there is said to be a phantom-like 7-foot tall woman dressed in all black with a large brim hat. If you ever saw the Woman in Black movie, you could get the idea of what I mean. Legends say she will appear to children, squeeze them tight, and then scream in their ear. Other than this, she is said not to have harmed them. There are also tales of how she hugs some to death. Their intentions to hug is said to be from losing her only daughter and hugging her while she had already passed. Who knew a hug could be so bad? Stealing the number 3 spot, we have the infamous Skinwalker. In Arizona, there is a mythical creature which can shed its own skin, like how a snake sheds. Skinwalkers are humans who possess immense supernatural power, including the power to transform into any animal. According to the legend, these evil beings have the choice to choose any animal they desire, but their most common animal forms are a fox, goat, owl, coyote, cougar, dog, and a wolf. These supernatural beings are said to have started as medicine men who eventually used their powers for evil, turning them to something worse. It is said that powerful skinwalkers have the ability to steal the body of its victims by locking eyes with them. The skinwalker can control that person and become them at will. Once it controls you, it has complete control and has the power to make the victim do things they normally wouldn't do. Skinwalkers are a sign of those who decide to choose evil over good. At our number 2 spot, we have Homie the Clown. In Illinois during the 1990s, there was a clown going by the name of Homie, who would be spotted going through the streets to lure children in his sketchy van. If you ever saw the free candy van meme, this is the unofficial origin story. His name originated from the beloved clown character in the early 90s sketch comedy show named In Living Color, who was an ex-convict who would carry a sock for rebellious children. Except for this clown, children would not get a sock for punishment, but would get something more sinister, more brutal. Eventually, the police would be involved, but would be skeptical about a killer kidnapping clown. Homie the Clown would eventually fizzle out of existence and may still be out there in his van, awaiting unsuspecting children. Finally, at number 1, we have the Riverdale Road. Definitely not the teen drama show Riverdale. There's an 11-mile stretch of road located in Thornton, Colorado, with almost all forms of supernatural reported, from ghostly beings to talking animals to devil worshippers. Just off the road, there's a place called Joggers Hill, where it's said that a car hit a jogger and left him to die, which created a revengeful spirit that is reported to attack any of those who try to enjoy the scenery. On this road, there's also a Camaro that drives around at night with only one headlight on that attempts to race with you. However, this race will be to your death, as this black Camaro is the exact same one in the fatal 1970s car accident that was completely totaled. If this wasn't terrifying enough, the history of this road showed that many slaves were tortured and abused on the farms surrounding the road, and it is said that if you look close enough, you can see the bodies of the hanged slaves in the trees. So next time you take a night ride to relieve your stress, make sure the road you're on is not called Riverdale Road. Thank you so much for watching. This was your top 10 scary American urban legends, and we'll see you guys next time.